Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan here at the Liberalist YouTube. Today we have Ian Miles Chung from Dangerous.com, the Daily Caller, formerly of Heat Street, um, the regular guy kind of journalist. How are you, Ian?
I'm good. How are you? And thank you for having me on.
That's no problem at all. I understand that you're Asian, but we won't hold that against you, I promise.
I gotta apologize to all the Asian Americans that are popping up on Twitter these days to complain about dresses that young white women wear.
Yes, are we sure that's white, though? I didn't see any kind of blood test.
Well, we're never sure, but she looks white, so she's white passing, and that means she cannot wear that dress.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's funny because I saw you shared the article. You wrote the article actually on dangerous.com
Mhm.
about this issue with the young woman wearing an Asian dress of some sort. I guess um, it was meant to be like women empowerment over in
Mhm.
China.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
yeah. 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 It was.
Now, that's actually one of my questions today is what is it with Asian culture and just not digging on this far intersectional left kind of SJW stuff. What is it about Asian culture that they don't seem to be inhibited by it?
I don't think it's really limited to Asian culture. I've seen a lot of Africans. I follow a lot of Africans on Twitter, and by Africans, I don't mean African Americans. I mean Africans from Africa, like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, even. And they don't buy into the social justice warrior thing. I think that is a very uniquely Western phenomenon that's going on. And as you can see, not all European countries are in it either. If you've met anybody from Denmark, you'll see that they are very much politically incorrect. I think it's because they don't have this sense of white guilt that has been basically drilled into kids' heads from a young age, right? That a lot of Americans have, a lot of Europeans have, where they're told that they are bad people because their ancestors may or may not have done something bad, right? And so they don't have that brainwashing essentially. So they don't have anything to feel bad about, right? And people in Asia, they have nothing to feel bad about. If their ancestors were conquerors, and many of them were, China did conquer other places, as did Japan, Korea, and so forth. They don't feel bad about it because they're like, well, that's something my grandparents did. I don't feel have to feel guilty about it because I'm friends with a Korean, I'm friends with a Chinese person, I'm friends with a Japanese. They don't stay in the past. Their mind isn't in the past. And I think it's the same for Africa, which has seen centuries upon centuries of wars. And yet now, the new people, I mean, the new generation, right? They are a more, I want to say global society. And I don't mean it in a globalist sense. I mean it in the sense that they can see past each other's ethnic differences. They can see past their cultural differences and find a common bond. Like, hey, Chinese food is great. It doesn't matter what race you are. Chinese food is great, and there's no worry about am I appropriating Chinese culture by eating Chinese food. There's nothing like that, and I think a lot of Americans and a lot of Europeans they suffer from this self doubt, this idea that they are supposed to hate themselves. And again, like I said, it's because of the education that they have been given, and it's not something that's really, I would say, it's not something that's really natural to American or European culture, right? It's more recent. It's something from the '60s, '70s, and '80s when communism came about. I would say that the a lot of the Bolsheviks, the Marxist thinkers, the post-structuralists and the anti-racist people, those guys, they came up with the critical theories on white supremacy and how it's evil and it's taking over the world and how we need to be mindful of what we say and what we do and we have to unpack the invisible knapsack and so on and so forth. So
It's
that I think is what's going on.
sort of like a secular religion of sorts. Like it
A secular religion. Yes.
sounds like oxymoron, but it's not that. I would call it a religion. It's a religion of equity, where everyone's
Yes.
equal. Yet they
Yep.
don't understand that everyone is equal in the fact that all of our ancestors committed atrocities and were victims of atrocities. Like human history is brutal.
Mhm.
And the exception to the rule is a civil society. And these deconstructionists they'd be best to learn. Like there's not much you shouldn't mess around so haphazardly with things. Like that's the thing with this whole prom dress situation. They're calling it cultural appropriation, and I feel that is such a horse shit term.
It
It's
is a
like
worship tool. Yeah,
100% because culture to survive needs to propagate.
it
And
does. Otherwise, it's dead. Where is the Papua New Guinean culture? It doesn't propagate. Well, they tend to eat each other, which is another thing. But if their culture actually propagated, right? Like Indian culture propagated. Obviously, you have Indian food in Britain. You have Bollywood. It's very, very popular. Um, it would be around more, right? Culture propagates, but because people are so protective of their cultures, they don't propagate, and then they go extinct. That's what happens.
is the far left actually looking for tribalism to return?
I believe so. Yes. I mean, look at what they tweet out. People. Like Sargon, he got banned for making a joke, essentially, right? And a lot of people get banned for making jokes if they're on the center or on the right. But you look at the left, they will be saying things that are not even jokes. They'll say how they'll talk about how much they hate white people, how much they hate white babies. Even there was a tweet that actually got thousands of retweets about this guy saying that he hates white babies, and they want that tribalism. If they see someone of a different culture, a different race, someone who has darker skin, or I mean, sorry, lighter skin, doing something that they don't agree with, or seems like say Eminem. I don't like the guy. I think his rap is crap nowadays. Like he fell from grace, right? But a lot of people used to complain about how he's a white guy and therefore he shouldn't be able to sing what he sings, right? He shouldn't be able to rap because rapping is part of black culture. And while it's true that rapping is part of African American culture, it is not exclusively African American. I mean, there's nothing in there that says, "Hey, you got to be of a certain skin tone in order to rap." Otherwise, you wouldn't have Drake, right? Isn't he like half black anyway? So
Right.
these people, they want to make these claims that they own culture, and they want to control it because that's all they're about, right? The social justice left is essentially the authoritarian left. They want to control everything, and by controlling, the culture, they basically control the means and the medium, and that is how they spread their message. So, if you listen to Anita Sarkeesian, now, if you're not familiar who she is, I'm sure people listening are, but if you're not, she's someone who came about during the early 2010s, right? And she was making some feminist video series about video games. That's what she's known for. She's very infamous for it because she would go after video games, attack them, call them sexist, misogynist, and so forth, and say video games need to change. We need to control them. And at VidCon in 2015, she did like a panel. She said she doesn't really care about video games. She just thinks of video games as a vehicle to spread feminism, and that's what it's all about. That they want to control culture because culture is a means for them to propagate their religion. It's smart. It's really smart, actually. It's like a meme that you control, right? And so by having control, by saying, "Hey, you can't use this. You're not using it in the way that we want you to. Therefore, you can't use it." They're essentially enforcing a set of boundaries, set of rules on how to promote this culture, their version of it. So they're all over the place, right? They're in video games, they're in science fiction, fantasy, they're in TV, they're in music. If you produce music that they don't like, for instance, if you're a white musician and you're playing Africanized music, they don't like that. They'll claim it's cultural appropriation. Fashion, they're in fashion now. They're attacking fashion designers for using local cultures, right? Like for instance, the dress. That's a perfect example. They want to control everything. It's a means to promote their religion. That's all it
Well,
is.
reading this great article. I'm not sure if it was National Review, but it was basically called the hamburger paradox, where
Hmm.
nowadays you have let's say you're at the door, you're at your home, it's a Sunday, you get a knock on the door, it's a Democrat. Then you get another knock on the door, it's a Republican. And they both ask you the same question. What are you up to today, this Sunday? And you tell the Republican and Democrat the same thing. Well, it's Sunday, I'm gonna get a beer, mow the lawn, grab a burger, watch the football game. And the Republican, maybe 20 years ago, would give you a lambasting for not going to church. That's not such the way anymore. But the Democrat will tell you that, well, the water you're using on your lawn is, you're using too much water, and that burger you're eating, well, that meat killed something, and your football team is racist. Like
Yeah.
insanity how much all of this seems to be like, especially the Trump resist movement seems to be more of not about policy, but about culture. They don't want to lose the culture. And
Yep.
it's pretty crazy. I wanted to ask about Trump. I'm not sure from your tweets and writings, what are your feelings on Trump as he is now?
I I was hesitant to support him at first, right? And that implies that I support him now, which I do actually. So I believe he's doing a lot for not just for the country, but for everyone. I mean, he solved the North Korean war, right? He ended the war. South Korea actually credited him for doing that, and people still refuse to offer him credit for it, which is very funny. It's almost as if they want him to fail, which, well, not almost as if they do want him to fail. His detractors want him to fail, and it's not that I necessarily support everything that Trump does, which I don't. Some things I don't. But I support the people who oppose him even less. When Trump does something good, like when he cuts taxes for people, he's helping, a lot of families go through their hard times, so giving them a basically what amounts to a pay increase, $2,000 a year, something like that. It's not even, it's not like he's giving them money. He's just cutting their taxes. The money belongs to them. So when people say, "Oh, he's giving people free money," that's not the case. It's more like he's taking less of their money as the government. So
What
when
your mind to acquiring peace in North Korea between North and South Korea? I mean, what did he do that
what did he
what
do? He talked to China for one. That is a thing that I don't think Obama did, and I don't think Bush before him even bothered to do. Right? They basically treated North Korea with kid gloves. There was this idea that North Korea is this dangerous regime that could at any moment launch a nuke that hits Guam or Hawaii or Washington D.C. even, because if they can't travel that far, then it would hit Washington D.C. Trump refused to play that game. He realized that that North Korea is bluffing, right? And he called that bluff. He said, "Well, you brag about having a button on your desk. Well, I have a button and it's bigger and it launches nukes that actually work." Right? That was his threat to Kim Jong Un, and Kim Jong Un is an insecure, chubby, ugly bastard. Right? This is a guy who, in order to have sex, he has to have slaves. Right? They're the only people who have sex with him because he's pathetic. And Trump realizes this in Kim Jong Un. He calls his bluff, says, "Hey, you're not as much of a man as I think you are, as everyone else thinks you are. You're nobody, right? You're just some fat, pudgy piece of crap." And so that's what Trump did. He treated him like a piece of crap and put him in his place. And Kim Jong Un basically bent over and said, "Fuck me in the ass, daddy." That's what happened, and that's all it took. With Obama, it was easy to bully him because Obama is a guy who bows to other people. Trump doesn't bow to anybody, and that's how it works.
I mean, the one thing I heard about the whole North and South Korea situation, and honestly, I feel it's a fair criticism, is can we really trust Kim Jong-un to keep his
No,
word? I
we
mean,
cannot trust him. I don't think we can trust him, but we can keep him in line, right? We can, if we, being Trump, can continuously threaten him and actually deploy those threats. I mean, instead of just saying, "Hey, we'll do something about it, we'll send you a nasty worded letter." No, don't do that. Actually sanction him, make it harder for him. Deploy a squadron of B-2 bombers, have them fly over Pyongyang. He will be scared shitless. These people are living in a bubble. We have to realize that they're not, they are, when they see planes flying over them, they're going to get scared shitless. So I think these types of threats actually do work. And if they were to, say, launch an attack on South Korea, maybe, use their artillery like they have in previous years, maybe bomb them back. That'd be the only way to teach them.
I guess it would. Now, they won't give him credit ever for anything Trump does well. They will never give him credit. But do you think he has a shot at getting a Nobel Peace Prize for this, or no?
I don't think he does, because the people on the Nobel Committee, many of them are ideologically driven. I mean, these are the people who gave Obama a peace prize and then claimed later that, well, they wanted to give him peace prize because they believed that he would not go to war, right? They believed that he would end all wars. And yet, after winning the peace prize, or even while he was, slated to win the peace prize. He was holding multiple wars in many, many different countries. He did not pull out from Afghanistan. He did not pull out of Iraq. In fact, he doubled the troops, right? He surged them in various places. And then he sent other soldiers to places like Niger to fight. Why? Like, oh yeah, they're fighting local resistance over there because we want to keep ISIS at bay. But he didn't even defeat them. He didn't send them enough, like enough help that they needed. And it wasn't until Trump came along that the ISIS was actually driven out of cities in Iraq and Syria and so forth, because he actually dedicated the resources that the military needed. So I don't think they're going to give it to him because, one, he's competent, and two, he's not ideologically he doesn't share their ideology, right? These are like progressives, and that's why they support Obama, and they'll credit Obama for things that Trump does. So
Right.
no, I don't think it has a chance.
What do you mean Obama was at war? I didn't hear this in the news. It would handle free presidency. What happened?
Exactly. Oh, and since you brought that up, it's funny to see the media go on about how they like patting themselves on the back, right? The mainstream media, they'll say, oh, if Trump has done anything good for this country, it's the fact that it's made the media very alert as to what the White House does, and we as journalists, we always believe in having a combative press, one that questions the narrative, one that brings truth to power. And where were you guys 6 years ago? Where were you 8 years ago? Nowhere. Like you guys were just kissing Obama's ass, and you were not doing anything. You were just saying everything that he does is great, it's perfect. If he manipulated data on Facebook, like his team actually did that. They did the whole thing that Trump is being accused of doing, right, with the gathering information from Facebook. Well, they actually bragged about it. Obama's team bragged about using Facebook stats, bragged about using their data, and Facebook bragged about it. They were like, oh yeah, we support you guys, right? And the media was like totally cool with it. They're running features on Wired.com saying, oh, Obama's team is so smart, so genius. They're actually using social media to their advantage. Oh, check this out. What is all of that? What is this nonsense? If it were Trump, they would say, oh, this is like corruption.
Wait, what was the controversy though? Because when I signed up for Facebook, I gave all my whatever information I use on there. It's theirs. Like, I don't understand what the big controversy was. I knew Trump in his campaign.
Okay, exactly. Yeah, it shouldn't be a big deal, but I think the controversy stems from the fact that this is a Facebook issue itself. It's not a hack. Like some people called it a hack when it first came out, right? No, the issue with Facebook is essentially that the apps, any sort of app, whether you downloaded a game, a shitty game, or like answered a poll, a questionnaire, whatever, it basically collected your information that was supposed to be limited to Facebook itself and not to third-party third-party apps. And what this app did was that it would read stuff from your phone and basically gather the information of your friends' accounts. So now, unless your friends' accounts were private, which most people's are not, it would actually siphon their data too. So even if they didn't download the app, but you did, they would be affected by it. Their information, basically their demographics, their who they vote for, etc. All of that would be taken by the app, and then the app creator, which happened to be some guy, he sold it to that one company, Cambridge Analytica. He sold it to them, and Cambridge isn't like the only company that does it. There's a few of them, and these people, what they do is they give this information over to political campaigns, to businesses, anyone who's willing to pay money for it. And that allows them to release targeted advertisements. It's really no different from what Facebook itself does, but this instead allows them to gain access to more personal details that Facebook ads themselves don't actually offer. So that's the issue.
All right. Well, I mean, the legacy media made a huge deal of it when it came to Trump. I mean, here's the thing, though. There's an alternative media, as I believe you're part of. I think you'd agree with that.
Yep.
Now, is there space for this alternative media in the mainstream, or will becoming mainstream relegate this media that you're a part of? Will it relegate this media to legacy media? I mean, where is the alternative media go?
I think alternative media is the future, right? But there are efforts now to basically shut down alternative media, and you can see it with the with YouTube, with the adpocalypse. Essentially, alternative media outlets. For example, Tim Pool is a good example. He's demonetized in some aspects, right? He can't publish certain pieces of news if a a video that he makes has the word terrorism in it. He's not going to get money from it, right? And that is how they demonetize us. They're essentially controlling what we can say. But I do think in the long term, it's going to, alternative media is the future, because people don't really believe the mainstream anymore. The mainstream, as someone who has been subject to the lies that they say about Trump, right? Like very similar to what they say about Trump, I should say. A lot of people are affected by it. A lot of people are affected by the lies that are published on places like CNN, even BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed was once upon a time, I suppose, alternative media, but now it's really mainstream. It's owned by all these progressive companies are pretty much owned by much larger organizations like Univision, for example, like Gizmodo. So I do think it's the future, but it's going to be it's going to take time for that to happen. There need to be alternative sources of revenue. With YouTube, we've seen the super chats, so that's really great. People donate money to Patreon and so forth, and that also helps alternative media outlets because they tend to get a lot more supporters, like a lot more diehard grassroots supporters compared to CNN. I mean, the only reason why CNN has any viewers is because they have deals with restaurants and airports to basically broadcast their crap all over, the venues. But I think people tend to trust individual journalists more so than they trust a network like CNN. So I do see it as the future, but there is a problem of monetization. I think every alternative media website, even the larger ones, struggle with monetization, but that will be probably solved with things like Bitcoin. I do think there's a future there.
Right. Well, I mean, there's also another complaint that I see is that, I've seen hyperbole, clickbait tactics from the left, like Alternet, HuffPost, all that.
Yep.
Now, what's your opinion on the right-wing media like Breitbart using the same tactics?
I do see it a lot with Gateway Pundit. I think they're probably the guiltiest website. I'm friends with some of the authors there, no doubt, but I do think they're guilty of clickbait. Breitbart, not so much actually. From what I've read, Breitbart's actually pretty good about this sort of thing. I think Breitbart gets a bad reputation that it doesn't really deserve. Yeah, it doesn't really deserve the reputation that people have given it, and I think it's mostly because the left sees Breitbart as perhaps their greatest threat. Right? Breitbart has a lot of clout. It's got a lot of great writers, a lot of great reporters. I mean, if you look at their UK team and their team in Texas, as well as their tech team is perhaps one of the best. You have people like Alun Bokhari working there, and his reports on Gamergate are better than anything I've ever read in the mainstream, whether it's a tech website or not. So I do think Breitbart has a lot to offer the media that perhaps people should give it a chance. So if you don't read it, or if you don't really know what it's about, and you've only heard about it, you've seen, oh, Breitbart is far right or something. Well, keep in mind that BuzzFeed thinks I am far right. I am certainly not far right.
I mean, do those terms really have any meaning anymore besides pejorative usage?
Nope, they don't have any meaning anymore besides pejorative usage. And I don't think anyone who follows me, any of my 84,000 followers, I don't think they think I'm far right unless they're like following me to troll me or something, right? So
I mean,
it loses meaning. Yeah.
Alternative media has definitely an advantage where they're willing to cross lines that legacy media won't. I mean, what are some of the sacred cows that someone like you could hit that the legacy media could not?
I could probably talk about 4chan and butt myself in there, right? Talk to people who are part of that community. I mean, you can join all these discords that I think any legacy media journalists would not want to touch, or even if they wanted to touch it, like if they wanted to touch Discord, they would refuse to because they don't know how to do it. They don't understand technology, which is a thing that I noticed with even like the tech journalists. Very few of them actually understand what they're writing about. They tend to get their information secondhand from somebody else. Like whenever, Gamergate's a great example because whenever they are talking about video games or video game scandals or, like online bullying, all they do is they'll interview some SJW who's very prominent, like someone like Anita Sarkeesian, who will basically spout off a bunch of lies or a bunch of talking points that have been rehearsed versus actually investigating the truth. So that's the problem with the legacy media, and anyone on the ground, anyone who's like a gamer or in the tech scene, they're gonna read this and they're gonna think, well, this is nonsense. I think to get away from Gamergate for a moment, I would talk about Wired.com and its essential demonization of James Damore. Right? If you don't know who James Damore is, he's the Google guy, the autistic Google guy who was fired because he sent in a memo that was requested of him, asking the company how to fix the company, right? Because they have diversity initiatives, and in his opinion, those diversity initiatives were actually weakening the company. They were hiring people who were not cut out for the job, stuff like that. And he got fired for releasing that memo. Now, the way that Wired.com covered this story was to essentially vilify him. They interviewed a bunch of people at Google, and these people are, if you're not in the circuit, right, you're not in the scene, you probably don't know who they are. You think, okay, it's just some engineers from Google. But no, if you actually pay attention to these people, you'll see that they're very loudmouth, very vocal SJWs who are friends of the writer, right? They crafted a narrative to basically make him into some sort of sex offender. It's disgusting. I mean, he's suing them for it, but suing Google, that is. But yeah, that tends to be the issue.
The media, not the media, sorry, the memo he wrote was actually very helpful and kind. It was written, you can tell he's definitely on the spectrum, but he wasn't looking to hurt anyone. And, he actually had the best intentions with that memo. Like,
yeah,
want to hire these people. Well, you got to look at this data. And if you see this and it's really kind of technical, and, if they actually took his advice, they would probably come out on top.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and I read that Wired article and a bunch of Wired articles that went out about that memo and James Damore, and it's stunning to me that these people who call themselves journalists, they don't seem to respect that the truth is important.
No, they care more about the narrative.
That's why I brought up with the whole clickbaity kind of titles. You said Gateway Pundit. I mean, do you ever tell these? You said you're friends with these guys. Do you ever tell these guys like, hey,
yes, I do. I tell them this is not a good headline. Like
yeah,
the content of the article could be good. There are some decent Gateway Pundit articles. I'll not lie. There are good pieces there, like the stuff Cassandra Fairbanks writes. Fantastic stuff. But then you look at the headlines sometimes, and it's trash. Right? It's like, what's going on here? Why do you need this clickbait trash headline to promote a genuine, legitimately good, well written piece of news? I think people would. I think it comes from whoever's handling the headlines. They underestimate the intelligence of the reader. They just want to get those clicks. But I think readers nowadays tend not to be clickbaity. Like there is a pushback against stupid headlines nowadays. Like when I like my Twitter account is pretty well known for just tweeting out headlines, and lately I don't do that as much as I used to because I get a lot of pushback from that. People reply and they'll say, Ian, did you even read the article? You sound stupid right now. And yes, I do read the articles that I post, but I get where they're coming from because the headlines tend to be very clickbaity. So it's usually better to offer context. And I think more and more readers are basically, grokking the idea that that headlines are not everything. It's sort of changing. And this is, like, the reason why headlines are such a big deal is probably due to Reddit culture. There is actually a pretty good video on YouTube where these guys ran a test, and they found that they could put up a fake article on Medium, give it a fake headline, one that's really that pushes all the buttons, right? And the article itself has nothing to do with the headline, and they found that most people would be arguing about the headline in the article, in the Reddit comments. They would actually act as if the headline was representative of the article because they didn't read it. And that was like the majority of people. So I think that people are, wisening up now, hopefully.
no, we can only hope. I mean, the thing is, it's embarrassing when you comment on something, not you personally, but if you
Yeah.
comment without reading it, it's super embarrassing when someone points out, like, actually, this is what it really says inside the article itself. Like, you just
Yep.
showed, that person just showed themselves as idiots, and nobody
Yes.
wants stupid. And honestly, I think there's slowly starting to change, especially like on Reddit and stuff, because there is a culture bubbling up of shaming stupidity. And
Yes, call out culture actually works. Imagine that.
In some ways, yeah, it
Yeah.
works.
It
People,
depends on what you're calling out, right? If you're calling out a dress, then they're a scumbag. But if you're
right now,
calling out someone for their stupidity, then sure, why not?
we're watching Kanye getting called out by Snoop Dogg. I don't know if you've been paying attention to
I
this.
have been paying attention. Yeah, I've been, and it's funny because like he's calling him like he's saying that you're being a black man wrong, right? That's what Snoop Dogg is saying, and I'm like, wait, what? Wait a moment, what? You can't say that. That's terrible. That's
Hmm.
racist.
See what picture the Snoop Dogg shared.
I did not see that. What did he share? What was the
He
picture?
shared Kanye West with his skin bleached white.
Oh, Jesus.
Right.
Jesus. That's
MP,
too much.
their music reviewer or their hip hop reviewer, used the phrase "colored boy" to refer to Kanye in one of their articles.
That's not okay. That really isn't okay. That is racism out and out.
Right. Now, do you think that Kanye is actually speaking to his audience, or is his audience shutting off and being replaced by people that agree with him? Is he speaking to the choir inadvertently?
I think he is speaking to his audience as well as people who already agree with him, right? I do think he's speaking to his audience because there is a recent poll. I think it was in Fox News, maybe it was a National Review. It said that Trump's support from the black community doubled in the week that Kanye was talking about supporting him. So there are a lot of black African Americans who do support Donald Trump, and they do support Republican policies, or maybe not necessarily Republican policies, but conservative policies, who are basically tired of being shamed into silence. And Kanye is by far one of the most well-known people on the planet, and he's saying it's okay to think for yourself. Like he himself has said that he doesn't agree with everything that Trump says. He doesn't identify as a Republican even, or even as a conservative. He said that my thoughts are my own, and and I have the freedom to think what I think. I will agree with some people, I'll disagree with other people. Like, I mean, he called his hero, one of the ball girl, right, uh,
Yep.
from that shooting, yeah, the mass shooting. Yeah, he called her his hero, and that is not a thing that made a lot of Republicans happy because she wants to take guns away, and yet here he is saying that he supports her because he sees in her a kind of like a kindred spirit, someone who's willing to stand up for themselves and say what they believe in, even if I can understand what he's saying, because even if I disagree with what she's saying, I applaud her for being brave enough to speak out. Although I would, much prefer to say, hey, Kyle Kashuv is my hero because he's like 17 years old. He's speaking out in support of the NRA. I agree with his views, and it's much braver, I think, for him to do it. But I see where Kanye is coming from.
I
I see
think
where he's
that's
coming from.
a fantastic sentiment that I think everyone can get behind. It's like, it's simple. Voltaire. Like, I disagree with what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it. I mean, really, I think that's 14 words, isn't it? I mean,
It might be.
I think it's something we can all get behind. I mean, I'm a member of the Liberalists, obviously, and not to speak for the entire group, but um, free speech is a principle that, to me, is neither left or right. I mean, do you have onto the
Mhm.
Kanye? Do you have any predictions for future celebrities, coming out for the Trump train? Anyone you can think of that may surprise some people?
Probably the Supernatural guy. The guy from Supernatural, the one who plays Lucifer on there. Yeah, he because he's a classical liberal, so he might come out for Trump. I don't know.
Right. I have an idea. I think Denzel Washington might.
Denzel, yeah, isn't he being like hit with some tax fraud thingy right now? I mean, that's not going to make him an ally of the left. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I can kind of see it because the way he was talking about media was very much in line with how Trump talks about media,
Yeah,
you know. And
yeah.
the deal about Trump, because now Trump is someone who obviously values optics and marketing, but he does a poor job with self-marketing in regards to his personal behavior. Do you think that's intentional, or he just has a blind spot towards his own behavior?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know Trump personally, and I can't speak for him. But I think it's obviously bad optics for depending on where you are standing, right? If you're standing on the left, you're progressive, you're a feminist. It looks like incredibly bad optics. The things that he does, the things that he says, grabbing her by the pussy, things like that. But I think if you're on the right, it's not necessarily bad optics. It's more like, well, here's a man who on occasion says very appalling things, but he doesn't apologize for it. He doesn't feel bad about it. If he does explain it, he'll say, well, it was a joke. It's not something that he takes very seriously. And he takes the people who complain about the things that he says even less seriously than most people would. And that is something to be applauded, especially in this day and age when everything is offensive, right? It's like Matt Groening, he said, the creator of Simpsons, he said that we live in a time, in a culture where it's sort of like hip, it's trendy to be offended by everything, right? You look for new things to be offended by. And Trump is emblematic of this whole, I'm going to be as offensive as possible, or I might be offensive. You might consider me to be offensive, but I don't care. I don't care what your opinion is because these are my thoughts. So I don't think it's necessarily bad optics for him. Maybe it is for him, but I don't know. It works out.
It seems like he's not concerned with the optics of his opposition, like how his opposition. He doesn't care because he knows no matter what, he can bring peace to, let's say, a 65-year war. Let's say something like that happens, and it won't matter,
Exactly. I mean, and that's why I like Trump, right? It's like he's not concerned with the optics of it. Like Obama would be, doing a PR campaign right now to clean up his optics, and he has done multiple times. But Trump doesn't care. He's just doing his job. While people were ranting about Stormy Daniels, the porn star that he supposedly had sex with, I don't even care. I'm sure he did. I'm sure he had sex with her. So what? The guy's a Playboy. He was in Playboy magazine on the cover even. Of course he's going to have sex with porn stars, right?
Right.
To me, it's like, why does any of this matter,
But is it really supposed to make him look bad to his base? Donald Trump having sex with a porn star? Like the guy who talks all the time like a big masculine, authoritative kind of person. Like,
exactly.
It doesn't look bad to his base. And it looks really hypocritical coming from the left after the whole Clinton Lewinsky debacle. Like when they were calling the family values right, like, and rightfully so, they were calling the family values right, just, every name in the book because
Pearl clutchers. Yeah. Because they were clutching pearls. Yeah.
These kind of prudes, and they. Now what? What do they have to say to Trump for?
Yeah, he's just doing what previous presidents have done. He's not, disrespecting the office. It's not like he had sex with her in the Oval Office, like a certain somebody named Bill Clinton, right? So where is their moral ground, really? Like, are they really going to be offended that he had sex with a porn star 10 years ago? Really?
I mean, the media just really went nuts on this Stormy Daniels story. I mean, what stories are not being covered in the mainstream that you feel deserve a larger platform? Like
I would say, currently I would say South Africa. That is the biggest story right now that no one is covering, right? No one except the alternative media. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should watch Lauren Southern's video on South Africa. She made a documentary. It's very, very enlightening. But
well, it looks like we lost Ian for a quick second here. So I'm just going to talk and kill some time. How you guys doing in the chat there? Good? Let me try to get him back. Let's see. We were just talking about a Lauren Southern video. I was about to hit him back. See what happened with our buddy Ian.
Am I back now? Yeah, I'm back. I crashed.
Well, don't worry. I killed the dead air with great meandering rambling. It was excellent. Probably my best.
What's the last thing I said?
Lauren Southern's documentary on South Africa and the current situation.
All right, so yeah, that is the biggest situation right now that no one's talking about. Everyone's talking about the Syrian refugees from Syria and so forth, but no, South Africa is in the midst of a genocide. They're killing off white people there, taking their property. They're seizing their property and they're murdering them in the most brutal, most horrific ways imaginable, and no one is talking about it. Why? Because it's racist to talk about bad things happening to white people. Apparently, that's like the the idea that's been ingrained in the media's head right now. Its collective head is thinking, oh yeah, we can talk about this because white genocide, that would justify all the crazy stuff that the alt right says, and we don't want to empower those guys, right? Yeah, let's just give a platform to Richard Spencer again. Yeah, that totally disempower them. That's what the media is doing. It's like shooting itself in the foot, right? They could
Yeah.
easily bring truth to power here. I love using that sentence against them by talking about this very serious issue. There are innocent people who are being killed, and they're being, they apply for asylum in places like Canada, and they are rejected because apparently it's racist to accept asylum, refugees from white people for some reason. It's insane. It's heartbreaking. I know people who live there. They want to get out of it. They want to get out of South Africa with their, with their lives, but they're not
Yeah.
allowed to. Yeah, they can't leave, right?
There was one leader, and I think it was Trudeau, don't quote me on that, that said even bringing up South Africans' problems right now is hate speech. Like a literal
Mm-hmm.
politician said that. And Australia opened up visas to the farmers in South Africa.
They did.
Uh,
Yeah.
they were hit by the mob on the internet,
Yeah.
um, as if that was a hateful act. Here's something that nobody's really talking about with South Africa is their water shortage that
Oh yeah.
this summer will most definitely happen. Johannesburg is way overloaded with people. Their facilities are falling apart. I mean, what happens then? How long is the media going to be able to ignore this story?
Syria happens, right? Because
Right.
Syria was, the Syrian war started because of water shortage. It hit all the towns, it hit all the cities, and then people basically started dying, and that created ISIS. That's it's funny how that happens. And South Africa is gonna, it's gonna be the same thing. And obviously, it's a different situation. We probably won't see a rise of Islamism or something, but we will see a rise in the popularity of Marxists, like the EFF, right? The Economic Freedom Fighters. That's what they call themselves. That's Julius Malima's anti-white hate group, and they're a legitimate organization. Yeah, legitimate, quote unquote. That is basically seizing power in these various places, and they're basically like the ANC, right? They're a spin-off of the ANC, except more hardcore, more leftist, more extreme. I think that a lot of white farmers are going to be at at the end of the barrel, right, of the guns when the drought happens, because they will be the first ones blamed for it, for the water shortage. They'll say, well, all you farmers are using our water to water your crops, so therefore you're guilty of killing all of us, so we need to kill you. That's probably what's going to happen, and it's coming. It's coming, and no one cares. Horrible.
Right.
It's
And
like it's like living in Germany in like the 1930s, 1936, and you see that the Holocaust is on the horizon, and you're warning everybody about it, and everyone, like the Jews obviously know what's going to happen, and they're panicking, and the media, the New York Post, or not New York Post, sorry, the New York Times is refusing to report on it because they happen to like Hitler. He's so charming, that man, you know.
isn't that I'm pretty sure that's pretty close to what happened
That's
in the night.
exactly what happened. Yeah, and the same New York Times before that supported Stalin. Like while he was killing all the refuseniks and the all the farmers. They're like, oh, it's for the greater good. It's all good.
We've posted on our public facing page about what's going on in South Africa. And here's the thing, like, if you've ever seen Black Pigeon Speaks,
Yeah, sure, I have.
have petitions running around, I make it a point not to bring up the farmer's race, because once you set up the chessboard like that and you're
Yep.
giving intersectional left that piece to play with, they're going to use it. And you can't really tell them, like, hey, stop making it about race when you just set the rules of the game.
Right, you
So,
have to just call them farmers.
purposely made the post help the farmers in South Africa, and we targeted it towards urban centers, New York, Los Angeles, all of that, Chicago, and the amount of racism coming from the left saying that they deserve it. It's really just people getting their own land back. They should just leave, and it's like the same crowd that says refugees are welcome here
Hmm.
have no standards whatsoever.
Oh, none.
It,
It's all double standards. They're hypocrites.
right. Now, I mean, that's a sacred cow that the legacy media won't touch. They won't touch South Africa. I don't even know what it would take for them to actually report on it. Um, even I
It's
think a test,
depressing.
I don't think they'd even talk about.
It's depressing, isn't it? Essentially, you could see millions of people dying and no one talks about it.
Right. I mean, we're gonna make a quick flip here to incels, and I've seen you speak about incels on your Twitter and stuff. I mean,
Go
what do
for
you
it.
mean internet incel culture that's going on? Like,
What do you mean? What do you mean?
well, they had their own group on Reddit, and
Oh,
you
they
know,
still do. They still, yeah, they're still on there. They just moved to a different subreddit. It's called, I think it's
but
called brain cells. Yeah,
seeing the journalists on the mainstream on the left talking about like finding these incels and
firing them.
firing them and making them more isolated, even though isolation is a big reason why they're lashing out the way they are. I mean,
Right.
what are your
Uh,
thoughts on incel?
my thoughts are that the term incel is it has two meanings, right? One is essentially referring to people who don't really get laid. They're not part of the incel culture. Maybe they're virgins, right? They have never had sex. They're depressed about it. They're just lonely men, right? They're I guess you could call them incels in the sense that they're involuntarily celibate, right? And that is that's like perhaps the majority of young men these days. And then there's the incels, the people who identify as incels, who make it you wear it as like a badge of honor, if you want to call it that, because they are somehow proud of being what they are, right? They're proud that they're neats, not employed and not in education. They're they use it as a way to be on the oppression hierarchy, as I mentioned on Twitter, because these the incels, like the one that guy who Elliot Rodger, and then later Alex Manassian or whatever his name is, they belong to that culture, right? The people who identify as incels. And now it's easy to conflate when when the left talks about incels, and left media I should say, they're basically demonizing everybody, and that's not cool. It doesn't get to the truth of things. But to actually explore the real incel culture, it's terrifying. They are perhaps a very violent version of the SJWs. They're like a reverse SJW, but not anti-SJW. That's not what I mean. I mean in the sense that they are playing with identity politics, and their identity revolves around the fact that they have that they're lonely men, right? And they blame women for it. They hate women, things like that.
You think about it, Ian. They're like a mirror image of radical feminists because radical feminists don't get laid either.
Yes, exactly. I mean, if these people got laid, perhaps they would have less problems. But getting laid, as I mentioned on Twitter, is really just it's a side benefit, right? It's not really the end goal. A lot of them will say, "Oh, I just want to get laid," and a lot of people make fun of them for saying, "Oh, you just want to get laid," but that's not really what they want, is it? I mean, getting laid. I mean, these people live in countries or in states where prostitution is legal. They could have sex today if they wanted to, but they don't. What they want is companionship, and they're not getting that companionship, so they develop these nasty thoughts. And so it comes from a lack of purpose, I believe. It comes from a lack of self-identity. Like they constrain themselves. They tie themselves up too much to the idea that they need to be with somebody, that they need to be not alone, that they need to have a girlfriend, but yet they refuse to do anything that enables them to get a girlfriend. They refuse to, if they lack skills, if they're not personable people, they don't want to learn how to be social. They don't want to learn talents, right? They don't want to learn how to play the guitar. They don't want to learn how to be good at anything, and they don't want to talk to people. That's like their biggest issue. They all have, serious mental problems, or like they suffer from extreme anxiety, but they don't want to get treated for it. Or if they don't have it, then they just refuse to basically go out of their comfort zone. They're perfectly happy being miserable, much like radical feminists. They just like how radical feminists blame the patriarchy for everything. You know, incels do the same thing, but with just women in general. And or the Chads and the Stacys or whatever that terms that they use. They see a guy being very I won't say a jerk, but they see guys who are assertive. They feel jealous instead of thinking, hey, why don't I be more assertive? Why can't I be an assertive guy who talks to women. Why can't I do that? Instead of thinking like that, instead they're like, well, that guy's a fucking asshole. I don't know what that girl sees in him. That is their reaction to it. They're only seeing the negative things about these guys because their views, their vision, their focus is tainted by jealousy. They're viewing everything through a very green lens, right? Nothing looks good to them. And when they see a woman going out with a guy, who happens to be assertive, they're thinking, oh, she's a slut. When your mindset is like that, you're in a mental prison. Nothing you see is real. It's all warped through this weird lens that they're viewing society as, and they're blaming everything else for their own faults.
To say about it, though, I don't know if there's a way to de-isolate the incel. They seem to make it part of their necessary identity. That's what it seems like to me.
I crashed again. Great.
Um,
Yeah, it's my friggin' Chrome. It does this. Where was I? What's the last thing that I said?
we're talking about how they treat it just the same way as the patriarchy, the feminist
Okay.
patriarchy,
Right.
and view everything through a very resentful kind of lens. Like it's like Plato's allegory of the cave. Like the flame that they view everything from is
Mhm.
resentment, and it seems like that's a big thing on the left. Is just resentment.
Resentment. Yeah, and this is leftist thought, right? That's what it is. And incels are part of that culture. They're part of that leftist thought. Instead of hating the patriarchy or hating white supremacy, they hate women. That's what they do. They blame
Right.
society for making them the way they are. And when they see a Chad, which is basically an assertive guy, they think of him as a Chad, as a player, as someone who's using women. He's a monster. He's just using women. What is wrong with you bitches who are listening to this guy, sweet talk you? He doesn't love you. He just wants your pussy. That's what's going through their heads. And to the girl, they're like, you're a slut, Stacy. You're a slut. Why are you sleeping with all these guys? All they have to do is be nice to you. All they have to do is call you, like be assertive, and you're swooning over them. Why won't you notice me? I'm such a nice guy. That is how they react to people, right?
Being
That's their
nice
lens.
being nice is the bare minimum expectation of a human being. So, first of all, they have to stop thinking that being nice means anything because that's just
Yep.
what you expect. That's the minimum. They're just
It's a bare
being
minimum.
expecting the maximum. And it's like you said about acquiring skills. Like, would Billy Joel
Mhm.
ever have a chance with someone like Christy Brinkley back in the 80s if he didn't learn piano and write some killer songs?
Exactly. Look at the one guy now. He looks like a garden gnome. He's got red hair. He was
Oh, Ed
Yeah, Ed Sheeran, right? He's not a looker. He's ugly, but he's a charming guy, right? And now he's dating the hottest women in the world because hey, he plays the guitar, and number two, he's assertive, right? He doesn't care about how he looks. He doesn't care that he looks like a garden gnome, and he's a likable guy. He's just a likable guy, and people love that about him. They want to call him their friend, and some people want to call him their lover. Why not? I mean, why not? He's a catch, right? And that's what these people need to do. They need to make themselves into catches, right? They need to be somebody that other people will be proud to call their friend or lover. Because if you can't even like yourself, you cannot expect other people to like you too. And again, people like Elliot Rodger, he called himself the supreme gentleman. He did not like himself. This is a guy who was full of self-loathing. He was always going on in his little manifesto about how he didn't understand why everybody hated him. Well, this is a man who lacked self-reflection. Right? He thought too highly of himself. I mean, no one likes an egotist. Maybe if you had an ego, but you sort of you're humble about it, or if you deserve to have an ego, then okay, sure, why not, right? But this guy, what did he have to offer? Why would anyone want to call him their friend? He's fucking psycho, right?
Exactly. You got to take responsibility, stand up, and you know,
The
assertiveness.
Pope says stand up. Oh, sorry.
Like, here's the deal, is there a way to isolate these men? Because you get isolated, you become depressed, and it becomes a vicious cycle. One of our chatters here in the YouTube here said it. I
Mhm.
believe his name is Xerxes, or man, some kind of weird dinosaur name, but he does
Yeah.
bring a point. I mean, isolation causes like this depression. It turns into a vicious cycle. Is there a way to pull these men out of this isolation?
I would think so. Yes, I think that a lot of people on the right, I would say, are actually helping these men. They're pulling them out, drawing them out of their, the loop, the mental loop that they're caught in, the mental prisons that they've imprisoned themselves in. People like Jordan Peterson are actually really, really helpful, because if you read his book, or even if you don't read his book, but you listen to what he says about cleaning your room and so forth, I know it's a meme. He actually gives really good advice to these men. Anyone can benefit from listening to him, but I think these, if you're a young man, lonely man, in fact, and in general, I think you stand a lot to benefit from listening to Jordan Peterson, because he's someone who gives you good fatherly advice, and this is advice that a lot of young men just don't get these days. They're not raised right. Their parents are not there for them. They're latchkey kids, or their dad, if he offers them love, it's probably in the form of like a car or house, and not in, like actual fatherly advice. They're not really being dads to them. They're just being like surrogate Santa Clauses to them, right? So
Also, the flip side of that, the inverse, that the parents are way too overprotective and they're more concerned with their children being safe rather than strong.
yeah, that
You got
doesn't
a,
help either.
I know
Yeah.
20-year-olds whose cell phones are still in their parents' name. Like,
Hmm.
where are you going to go if you can't figure out how to adult properly?
Exactly. You have to grow up, and someone like Jordan Peterson teaches young men, especially young men, I'm sure young women can benefit from his advice too, on how to become adults. That's essentially it, right? And it means finding a like-minded group of people who are, whom you can sort of like, depend upon as friends. You need friends. You don't need people who are feeling sorry for themselves. Like if you're joining the incel community, that's a mistake. All you're gonna do is you're gonna run into other similarly depressed people who are not helping themselves, who are not being helped by anyone, who are basically wallowing in their own self-pity, their misery, their sense of victimhood. And that's just what it is, right? Being an incel is self-victimhood. It's just like being an SJW. Oh, you're an oppressed minority. Boo-hoo, right? Don't be that person. You need to stop thinking of yourself as a victim, first of all, and believe that you can actually fix yourself, because you're the only person who can do it. You can't depend on other people to do it, but you can use help. And, for that, I would say, listen to Jordan Peterson, clean your room, take responsibility, own up, own up, tie your own boots, right? Tie your own shoes, I should say, not boots. Not everybody wears those. Tie your own shoes and take control over your life. If there's somebody in your life who's controlling you, break free. You're in the power to do so. I know it's hard for a lot of people who have overbearing parents who are giving them everything. I know it's hard to move out. I know it's hard to say, hey dads, please stop paying my rent. You need to get your own job, and you need to prove to yourself that you can do it. You can't just depend on other people, because here's the thing: if you are dependent on other people, no one can be dependent on you. And there is nothing less attractive than a guy who cannot support himself. Because if you can't support yourself, how do you expect to support her? Right? You have to be able to be self-sufficient. That's what women look for in men. And nowadays, men even look for that in women, right? Many men do. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. So that's what men need to do. They need to be self-sufficient and realize that, being unattractive, not being self-sufficient is very unattractive.
Well, I think a lot of the incel culture, as I'm reading them, they take way too much stock of external looks. Like you were saying with your Ed Sheeran example, like that guy has a lazy eye and he's like he's totally unkempt. He's about 5'1", and like, oh wow, look, he's got gorgeous women on his arms. Why?
Yep.
Oh, he's assertive. He's a man. He takes care of his shit, and he, is confident. Like, I think they don't understand women. That's one of the biggest thing, and they're too wrapped up into their identity to even speak with women. And honestly, through my conversations over the many years I've been alive with women, is they want someone they can feel safe with, someone who has a spine but also has a heart, like a
Mm-hmm.
good balance of those two things. And I noticed too much that um, some men are way too much spine or way too much heart, like too sensitive or too
Yeah,
brusque.
no one wants a sensitive ninny.
Right. And nobody wants a heartless bastard. Like,
No.
really,
Yeah,
no.
that's just cold. Yeah, I mean, no, who even wants to be your friend if you're unable? Like, it's okay to be stoic, right? It's perfectly okay to be stoic. And in fact, it's a laudable thing to do, to be in control of your emotions. But some people, when they're like super cold, it's like they're maliciously cold. They're like going out of their way to be cold to people, and no one likes that. You have to
Hey,
have heart. Yeah,
Guns Blazing here in the chat, he has a good point. Don't focus on the woman to get a woman. Focus on yourself. Like
exactly.
exactly it. I
I
want to
have.
bring it
Yeah,
Trump.
go ahead.
Now, Trump previously stated in an interview that he's a nationalist and a globalist. I mean, what do you make of that statement?
I think what he means is that he recognizes that America cannot take an isolationist stance. It's not like the 1920s where America can stay out of a war, right? Staying out of World War II was a very bad thing because if America went in early, they could have shut down Hitler, probably 2 years in advance. What he means is that he's putting America first, but he also recognizes that America is a global player and that America has a much bigger role to play in the world, and it has a lot to benefit from the world itself by interacting with it. So America is not an island; it cannot isolate itself. But American policies need to put America first and not the world first. In a lot of countries, Canada being a very good example, they put the world before they put Canada. Like Trudeau recently implemented the carbon tax for Canadians, and the people hurt by the carbon tax are the middle class. The middle class is actually shrinking as a result of it. The taxes have increased exponentially. They cannot afford anything. And that is because he put the world first. He wants to stop global warming, right? All that stuff. And that is not putting Canada first. That's putting the world first. So that's a very bad policy. Whereas Trump, he might say, "Hey, I'm not going to do this carbon tax thing, but I'm going to recognize that having tariffs all the time, with certain countries might not be beneficial to Americans."
All right. So we're largely on the same page in that, in that I feel that Trump is um, recognizing that America is the sole imperial global power.
Yeah.
Um, and when people complain about imperialism, at least as far as it goes, I go, well, that's a Pandora box that you're not closing again, like unless there's a total collapse of the world. So what country could you name that would take the place of imperial global power and not just fuck everything up, for lack of
Right.
a really put it
Like,
simply. So I remember when that happened. That's one thing that happened where Trump's crowd kind of freaked out a little bit.
mhm.
The other one was Syria. Now, what do you make of the actions America is taking in Syria? Are you well versed in these, or?
I am well versed in it, and I would say that is a mistake to participate in Syria. I don't think we need another war there. And I mean, if you're asking me personally, I would say that it makes no sense for Assad to launch chemical attacks on his own people the way that he has been accused of. It doesn't make any sense because America was withdrawing at the time those attacks happened, and by the attacks happening, America went back in as a result of it. America decided, oh yeah, we're not going to withdraw just yet. So
Right.
I think he's being set up. I think he's being set up there, and I think the Middle East would be a lot safer with him around than without him. Yeah, he might be a tyrant, he might be evil and everything, but the alternative is even worse. ISIS is worse. ISIS would kill everybody. They would kill all the Christians there. They would kill all the Jews. They would kill all the Alawites, right? The people that his tribe belongs to, right? Assad belongs to, and there's millions of them. They would kill all of them. They would die. And I don't like that idea any more than I like the current one. But I think the current his reign, as iron fisted as he is preferable. It's just like Saddam Hussein. The guy might have been a huge asshole, but look at what came afterwards. Iraq, turned to shit essentially without him. So it's you have two bad options, but having Assad around is the least bad option, and Putin sees it. Putin sees it, and I wish other people would as well.
Oh, here's the deal, though. I don't know which side to believe, but I do believe that to look like a false flag, there are certainly some actors within this conflict that would like to make the chemical attack look like a false flag, especially
Yeah,
Russia. They would.
especially.
Russia needs a warm water port. It's much like the Japanese-Russian war back in the 1900s. Like, they need a warm water port. If it's not Syria, it's going to be Iran. So, like, if they show Iran that you need Russian protection, so let us use one of your ports, like that helps them out a lot. Plus the pipelines they always try to build through there to bypass NATO.
Yep.
Um, there's It's all circumstantial. I agree with
Mhm.
you that we keep our boots out of Syria, 100%. But part of me, and it's the cynical part, I got to be honest, the
Mhm.
pessimist of me is saying that Trump was merely using Syria as a staging ground to show North Korea that he's not afraid to launch missiles.
That's also possible. That's also possible. I mean, considering the the amount of destruction and damage that the missiles have caused, even if they didn't kill any civilians. I mean, that's a perfect example, right? He destroyed all the installations. He didn't kill anybody because it's so surgical, and he can show using Syria as an example. He could very easily show North Korea the same thing, right? He would say, "Hey, we're not going to kill any of your civilians. We're not going to piss them off by plunging them into war. We're just going to decapitate you. We're going to take out Pyongyang. We're going to take out the leadership, and there's nothing you can do about it."
Right. And you remember when the first cruise missile bombing of Syria happened, it was when President Xi from China was there having
Yep.
dessert, and he made
Oh yeah.
mention Xi was there. So I when Trump first started, I never bought this 4D chess narrative that you will hear from the Trump supporters. I
Yep.
didn't buy it. But more and more, I'm just seeing these little coincidences and having a harder and harder time to believe that they're
There's
coincidences.
too many coincidences at this point, isn't there?
Right. So like I honestly myself, Daniel Werner, have to come out and say that I will likely be voting Trump in 2020. And myself 2 years ago would have punched me in the jaw for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, I would have said, well, Trump seems a bit unhinged, right? But turns out he's actually not. He's smart. He's a genius. Maybe a genius. A stable
I
genius. A very stable genius.
don't know about that, but you know, like
That's his own words. That's his own words. I'm just making
yeah,
a joke.
I know it's better than Hillary though. I
Yeah. And
think you
she's
and I
president, don't you know? She's very presidential. It's her turn now.
return. Yes. So so how does we've seen Trump deal with them, and you've likely dealt with them a lot. I mean, what's the best path towards combating the SJW left, at least on social media, because that seems to be where they're
Make fun
loudest.
of them. Meme them. That's the
Yeah,
best way to do it because it's a meme war. It is the meme war. That's what's going on right now. I know it sounds stupid, but it's a new frontier, and that's what's going on. You need to meme them to a point where everybody's fucking laughing at them. China's laughing at them. They're calling him Baijo, right? Basically, stupid fucking idiot. That's what it means colloquially. So that's what you need to do. And unfortunately, the way that Twitter's algorithm works is that it's boosting them, right? So you might see a really bad take, one that says, "I hate white people are scum," and that's got 15,000 retweets, and that's because the person who gets a viral tweet, they're probably being boosted by Twitter itself. So don't lose hope, though. Just see that and be like, that's just fucked up. I got to say something. Be angry instead. Speak up, right? Speak up. Make fun of them. Make fun of them whenever they do something really, really dumb. Like when there's this new article in Huffington Post about how women are now abandoning straight men to have sex fantasies about fish. Make fun of them. That is ridiculous, right? That's completely ludicrous. It's absurd. When they talk about a video game like God of War, they say it's toxic masculinity to raise your child if you're a man. Yeah, make fun of them. It's just nonsense. You got to keep making fun of them. Point out how ridiculous they are. And everyone, I think, the normal people who don't pay attention to internet culture, they'll see this. This stuff leaks out, right? It seeps into the general mindset, the general populace of people. Post it on your Facebook. People will look at it and they'll be like, this is absurd. I'm laughing at this. God
oh,
damn, these people are nuts.
it absolutely leaks into the main culture because I remember that second debate between Hillary and Bernie 2016, where Bernie Sanders, and this is where he lost me. I was a Bernie supporter until he said white people don't know what poverty is like, or something,
Yeah.
similar. And that was just everyone turned off.
Yep.
Everyone at that point was like, okay, that is really stupid. You do
That's dumb.
understand Rust Belt is Bernie. Like you should understand what that is. You're supposed to be for the people, and you're separating people like that. You had the someone running to run the DNC,
Yep.
uh, Tally Cohn, I think her name was. I'm probably getting the name way off. There was a woman running for DNC chair, and she said, "My job is to tell white people to shut up." And it's like because we see what happens when people react to it the way the left wants them to react. They end up becoming ethno-nationalists. They
Yep,
end up the opposite side of the coin, and that's exactly what the left needs. The progressives need to stay in power. They need a boogeyman. They need a cudgel.
they
The
do.
fact that they're calling Ben Shapiro alt-right should really make everyone turn their head like a dog and be like, "Huh? How you?
Exactly.
Guy has a yarmulke." Like,
Yeah,
like,
he's a Jew. How can he be an alt-righter? How can he be an ethno-nationalist at
right.
all?
That's to your point of like, um, make fun of them. Like, you don't need to do much except show their own words as like unedited and just give them.
Yeah, basically, yeah. You don't even have to do a little diatribe. But it helps to be funny. It helps to be a very funny person. Look at what Milo does. Look at what a lot of popular centrist and right wing people on Twitter do. Right when they make fun of the left, they get very popular. There's people like Neon Taster is a pretty good example of what it means to make fun of the left. Orwell and Good. That guy is also spot on. Lazy Easy. If you don't follow her, please do. Like, they're funny people. They make fun of the left, and they may not necessarily even be conservatives at all, but they're making fun of the social justice warriors, and that's what we need right now.
Right. Well, this whole PC culture is nothing new. Honestly, if you were around in the early '90s, the there was a definite PC culture on college campuses. If you There's a movie called PCU, Politically Correct University. I believe it was in 1994. David Spade, a few other well-known names, and they even used the term rape culture in that movie.
Wow.
And, and it's prophetic.
Yeah.
And what people did back then in the culture, because there wasn't the internet, they made fun of those kind of people. And if you look at Clerks, Kevin Smith's first movie, with Randall being the total anti-PC guy, they didn't even have to be over the top with it. Mike Judge is a perfect example, making fun of the SJWs long before they were called SJWs. I mean, we
Yep.
need more content creators who, instead of being deadly serious, have a bit of joy, have a bit of verve, a little light.
Comedians. Yeah.
Yeah, like comedians are a great one. Owen Benjamin, for instance. Everyone
Yep.
needs to.
Steven Crowder, also pretty good.
Crowder is pretty good. He can be a little partisan, but
Yeah.
um,
He's
you
good
know,
in general. Yeah. I like his stuff.
but
He likes to,
I mean,
he likes to wear dresses.
the, the crowds love to laugh, and if
Yep.
a group is going to be all about no laughter, no adopting other cultures, no
No fun
laughing,
allowed.
doesn't sound. Yeah, it sounds like the fun police. That's why I've taken to calling these people the PCs, not
Yep.
the all these long words and stuff. Everyone knows what PC means if you bring it up to them. Like if you're at the bar talking with some buddies and you're like, "Oh yeah, these PCs want to,
Hmm.
I can't wear a sombrero on Drinko de Mayo because
Yeah.
PCs after me." They'll know exactly who you're talking about.
They do, yeah. And it's funny because you can go to a bar nowadays, and if you're ordering a tequila, some guy might get mad at you. I mean, this is how it's proliferated, right? The SJWs are actually out in the real world trying to bully people, and of course, it doesn't really work in the real world because it's not the internet. But they're trying, and that's scary. So we need to stop them before it gets too big by making fun of them, calling them out.
Yeah, I mean, just treating them as the joke they are. Mockery is That's why it seems like they get more upset at the trolls.
Yep.
And here's my idea to troll them. I want to call and prank phone call. I've done it before. Bias reporting hotlines. Now,
Oh,
New
yeah, I
York,
know what those are.
New York State, for instance, their entire state has a bias reporting hotline. I called them up the other week and I said, "Yes, I have to report some bias. I called your hotline and it said press one for English. Why does it have to be one? Why
Yeah.
does like the guys?"
Yeah, why not in Spanish, right? Yeah, why not in Spanish? Why doesn't it answer you in Spanish?
I said, "You are biased, sir," and they said, "Excuse me." I said, "You are so." So, like, I want to start recording those and putting them up. Just
It'd be
prank,
good content for YouTube.
prank phone calling the bias reporting hotlines. Like, just just rip them apart. It's not hard. They give you all
Not
the
really.
ammo.
Yeah, they do.
So, I mean, as far as this 2020 election goes, we're bringing it back to Trump. Are there any Democrats that you see that might have a chance, like with the broad population?
Oh wow, no one really comes to mind. I mean, well, I guess it's Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas. She might be the only one. Yeah,
I don't really see anyone. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard could be a
maybe. Yeah.
choice. I don't think she'd run against Trump, to be honest.
No, I mean, no one wants to get their ass handed to them by that guy.
That's the death of a political career right there, getting your ass handed by a reality TV star. It's not going to look good.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, I think Hillary's going to try again. She's just
Really.
nuts. Yeah, I could see it happening. It's her turn, right?
She's going to, I don't know. If she tries again, it's going to be,
It's going to be the death of the Democratic Party.
everyone announces the death of each party every election cycle, it feels like. It's like, you mentioned it before, like a black male support of Trump doubled in a week. And it's like, can the Democrats survive losing even 6% of black support?
Probably not. Probably not.
I mean, it goes to show exactly why it seems they're absolutely losing their mind over the Kanye thing when he didn't really say anything controversial. He didn't do anything too controversial.
Yep.
Chance the Rapper posted, "Black people don't have to be Democrats," and
Yep.
it bloated on him.
They did, yeah, because if you're a black man and you're in a position of power, God forbid you say anything that doesn't go with their narrative.
Right. I mean, man, I'm still stuck on you saying Hillary Clinton. Do we really want to see that again?
I don't want to see it again, but I kind of hope she does. Because it'd be
There's
a
a sick
train
part
wreck.
of me wants her to go again. Like,
Yep, pretty
we're
much.
not yet. Come back. I'm like, ugh. Well, we're coming up on the hour here, and I
Yep.
want to thank you for joining us on our quaint little channel. That you know, I
Yeah.
really appreciate Ian how you came on and spoke with us. Let's
Yeah.
see if anyone in the chat has any questions. I mean, as far as I go, where do you feel we are in this culture war? Like, are we looking good? Are we at a dangerous point?
I
Like,
think we're at a dangerous point. And it's not because of anything we've done, right?
yeah,
I think it's because social media wants to shut us down. That's the dangerous point. If they do succeed in banning everybody, we would lose our voice. So we need to fight against it. That's a scary thing. Like in the UK, obviously, they're putting people in jail for making jokes. So
right. I was actually we can
that
talk
needs to
about.
stop.
I wanted to talk to you about the Dankula case. I mean,
Sure.
do you see that coming here to America at all? Is that something that you?
Um, at the current pace of SJWs proliferating, yeah, I could see it happening. Maybe it'll happen in a place like California. It's not going to happen in Vermont or not Vermont. Sorry, it's not going to happen in a place like Alabama or Florida. But I could see it happening in a place like California. Yeah.
That'd be absolutely frightening. It would never last with our Supreme Court. I
No, no,
hope.
it won't last. So I mean, they could try, but it will get thrown out eventually. But the fact that it's even a possibility is kind of scary. It should scare you.
They already tried that, I believe, in California. Have you heard of the band called the Slants?
Yes, I have actually. Yeah, they're from what? Seattle or Portland? One of them, right?
Yeah, they're
And
from Pacific Northwest, and they're all Asian like cover bands, and they called themselves the Slants.
yep.
And
And
they
it went to the Supreme Court. Yeah.
right, they weren't allowed the name, but the Supreme Court upheld the right to offend. And I think that's what really, personally, when it comes to the whole phrase "free speech," is a dumb phrase. It's much like how I feel about the farmers versus white farmers in South Africa. Um,
Yeah.
instead of saying free speech, because free is what they attack. They attack the word free. What
Yeah.
we should do is defend the right to speak itself, so that their only option is to attack speech itself.
Yep.
Like,
Expression.
yeah, plus humor. You got to have more humor. There's
Mm-hmm.
people are worried about not looking professional with memes, but honestly, like it's all about the working class. At least as I see it. That's just my
It is all
opinion.
about the working class. It's about the middle class. It's about the working class. It's the same thing, right? Essentially, at this point. It's not about the elites. You don't want to look good to CNN. Who cares about CNN? Who cares about those elites, those smug bastards who are up there in their ivory towers sneering down at us? Fuck them. They're not the people you want to cater to. They're not the people you're talking to. They don't matter. Those people don't matter anymore. They're obsolete.
So we're going to close with a question from Low Res Boy from the chat. Have you heard about the Fair Play video game?
Fair? No, I've not. What is that?
Apparently, a
Is
Fair
it a
Play.
fair play alliance? Is that what he's talking about?
So you assume the role of Jamal, a young African American graduate student. Um,
Hmm.
you gain points when you identify implicit bias.
Oh, God. Oh my God. I need to download this game and stream it.
I'm gonna yes. If you would like to have any of it on for a stream for that, I would love to play that as well. And thank you again, guys. Ian Cheong here. Check him out. The links are below to his Twitch, the link to his dangerous.com, also Daily Caller. Ian, thank you. And
You're
thank you.
welcome.
Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night.